Hello, I'm Gary Friedman. This is the second in a series of courses we are running to introduce stop-motion animation to puppeteers, artists, teachers and students. As a long-time puppeteer, it's been a fresh new inspiration exploring stop-motion animation over the past few years. I was always inspired by Terry Gilliam's crazy sense of humor and the work he created in the 1970s for Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Oh, what a lovely little...
Although I must admit, I only got to see his work decades later because television didn't exist in South Africa when I was growing up. When it finally did emerge out of the darkness of apartheid, I was already grown up, and even then, the cultural boycott of television from the UK made sure we never got to see these programs.
Cut! That's it!
I finally did discover the visual world of Gilliam's work. I was blown away by the simplicity of using cutouts and humor to portray a powerful message. At that time, I was already performing a satirical political puppet show in the streets of South Africa and around the world.
You'll never guess what happened. Koeberg, our very own nuclear power station, has exploded and all the nuclear fallout has spread around South Africa, turning everybody's skin black so nobody can vote again.
It wasn't until 1987 that I was officially introduced to the art of puppetry for film and television by Muppet master Jim Henson in France. The potential of puppetry for the screen was opened up to me. We were shown the potential of exploring what could be done using a small analog camera. Later, technology became digital, and this sparked off a global phenomena of puppetry for the screen. In 2016, I started dabbling in stop motion. My first short film, Je suis Punch, was a direct tribute to two puppeteers that had been detained in a Madrid prison for performing a political street show. Their case sparked a barrage of protests and fierce debate about freedom of speech in Spain and beyond. Je suis Punch adapted my political street performance art to the world of stop motion. And this brought a new aesthetic to my work. I found the technique of using ordinary brown paper, which easily communicates any issue to an audience, the simplest possible way, and using only breath, light, and sound. Continuing my political work, I produced a piece on a newly inaugurated US president and his desire to erect walls and barriers between communities. Build that wall emphasized the physical and mental barriers we put in place to emphasize our differences instead of focusing on our similarities as human beings, communities, and populations.
We need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly.
Soon after this, we were enveloped in another human crisis, which encompassed both politics, Black Lives Matter, and health, the COVID pandemic. While in lockdown in my studio here in Melbourne, I produced Winston in 2020, and then The Mask Maker in 2021. Both these short films looked at the effects of COVID and being isolated from the world and its impact upon our lives during these very strange times. Winston was inspired by the hero of George Orwell's 1984, whose story seemed to be played back to us again in 2020 as the world transcended into chaos and people became confused and desperate. It's a story of a puppeteer who goes on a journey into his own subconscious world of panic and isolation. The Mask Maker tells the story of humankind from our emergence from the cave at the end of the Ice Age through history. The mask being used as a barrier to our true nature, as every man grapples with the concepts of ego and power. As you can see, as a puppeteer, I became fascinated in the world of stop motion, and I look forward to you joining me on the next part of my stop motion journey as we explore together the world of stop motion. This initial 3D course includes pre-recorded classes for you to work through, live online sessions to complement the coursework, and homework to which I shall provide feedback. Lesson 1. What is stop motion animation? In Lesson 1, we introduce the concept of stop motion, experiment with creating flipbooks, and briefly look at different techniques in animation. Lesson 2, a brief history of stop motion. Stop motion had its beginnings in the late 19th century, and the basics of stop motion remains the same today, although technology has changed from analog to digital, opening up this art form to millions more people around the world. We'll look at the earliest animators, examine their work, and compare their development throughout the past century. Lesson 3. Story development and storyboarding. In this lesson, we discuss the elements of storytelling and the graphic representation of depicting this story as a visual image using the technique of storyboarding. Storyboards also help us plan out our shots and concretize our ideas onto the page, that before we start shooting, we have a clear understanding of all the elements of movement, camera, sound, and direction. Lesson 4. Lighting a stop-motion set. We shall learn about the main lights and lighting techniques required in setting up scenes. We'll discuss lighting the characters and how to light a green screen set, should we choose to use one. Lesson 5. iPad settings for shooting. We will go through all the settings on the Stop Motion Studio Pro app in order to use the iPad to shoot our stop-motion piece. Lesson 6. Objects in stop motion. We look at 3D objects which are suitable for stop motion and start learning about the art of movement and the timing for our characters. Lesson 7. Basic puppet building. We shall go through a summary of designing and constructing 3D puppet characters and look at what materials we can use. We'll look at character design, modeling clay, wire armatures, etc. Lesson 8. Set design and construction. Here we'll look at designing and building sets, using various materials, both found and bought. Lesson 9. Shooting with the iPad. We'll learn the settings and tricks required to make the best film possible using the Stop Motion Studio app. Lesson 10. Post-production. Editing on the iPad. We'll tackle our edit and post-production for our first stop-motion film using iMovie. Now that we have completed shooting our first short film, we need to edit, add sound effects, music, and post it to our social media. Lesson 11, summing up. We shall run through all we have learned and recap on how we applied this to our short film. Once edited, we'll be proud to show this to our friends and social networks online. I hope you'll join us on this exciting adventure for our 3D stop-motion animation course, and keep posted on our website for regular updates and future course discounts.
History in the making.
So the story goes.